Roy A. Kemp here. This is my new book on Revelation, just off the press, almost 400 pages. I'm in the Hall of Fame, Preacher's Hall of Fame at Fort Worth, and some pictures on that. It would make up 400 if it wasn't for that. That's $8.95 plus 60 cents for postage. And my address is 3000 Astor Avenue, Fort Worth, Texas, 76111. This is my book, Life After Death, Rendezvous in Paradise, board back or hardback, $7 plus 40 cents for postage. And here is about the best thing I ever got out. There is 11 sermons, 27 minutes each, on prophecy and revelation. All of them but one are made up of prophecy in the book of Revelation, and nothing like the book itself, not as detailed. And they're sermons. If you want to hear me preach, you'd want this, because I preach here, and of course tonight and the other nights I'm teaching. And let's go now to chapter 11 and verse 6. We closed by saying last night that Moses and Elijah would be the two witnesses and produced enough proof to anyone that will believe that they are the two in the Old Testament, that Moses turned water into blood, Elijah prayed to heaven, and it rained not for 3 years and a half. But we found out last night that this is a different time, that this is during the tribulation period, the last half of it, and that during that time of their prophecy, Moses and Elijah will have power to shut up heaven that it rain not, if he wants to, if he pleases. I said last night it wouldn't rain a drop, not unless Elijah says so. He has the power for it not to rain. And here is Elijah. And I said last night that they had already been back from death, the afterlife. They already been back. And I gave you Mark, the 9th chapter, verses 1 to 10. Tonight I want to give you Luke 9, same chapters, but different books. Luke chapter 9, verses 30 and 31 and 32 is where that Moses and Elijah talked to Jesus about his death that he was to accomplish at Jerusalem. And you understand that when they came back, since Moses died and since Elijah was translated, last night that Moses had been dead over 1,500 years, Elijah had been translated 800 or 900 years before, showing there's a life after death. There's an adventure of the great hereafter. And there's the proof of it here. Ready? And we go from here over to the 12th chapter. Ready? And I saw a great wonder in heaven. A great sign would be better. A great miracle, yes. The Jews call a miracle a sign. We call it a wonder, whatever. I saw a great sign or a great wonder up in the atmospheric heavens above the ground. I keep saying that everything above the black line will happen in the atmospheric heaven above the ground, or in the starry heaven, or around the throne of God. 3 heavens. Paul went to the 3rd heaven, 2 Corinthians 12, verse 1, 2, and 3. So here is a woman, but I want you to understand it's a sign, a symbol. Now, if you don't understand the symbols, you can't get anywhere with the Revelation. If anybody tells you it's an easy book, they haven't mastered it. It's not an easy book. It's not like John. It's not like Mark, not like Luke. You have to know all the signs. Here we go. I saw a sign. I saw a symbol, that's better, up in heaven. And the symbol was a woman, not a breathing woman physically, not as we understand a woman, as tall as myself or a little taller. Not that, not a breathing woman fleshly, but a sign, a miracle, a metaphor. And John was given that sign, and he actually did see the silhouette of a woman up in the atmospheric heaven above the ground. And she was clothed with the sun. That's a beautiful thing. Now, what could that mean? Here it is. One, the woman is Israel. Of course, Israel's a nation now since 1948. But a long time ago, it was the Promised Land, or Beulah, or Canaan, whatever you want. But I saw a woman clothed with the sun. The woman is typical of the Jew, or typical of Israel, if you please. The reference is Isaiah 54 and verse 1. She is called a widow. And in verse 5, she's called the woman, the wife of the Most High God. Wife in the sense of spiritual language, of course. So that identifies the woman as being Israel. In fact, in Isaiah 54:5, it says that Israel is the one to whom it is addressed. So the woman represents Israel, and she's clothed with the sun. Now let's have a little enlightenment on it and get it. She could be clothed with the sun. She'd burn up in less than a half a second, 100 parts of a second. So the point is, she is clothed with illumination. Illumination. Now you ought to get it. Israel has illumined this world with enlightenment, both spiritual and otherwise, than any people or nation that ever existed on the face of the earth. Whether we like it or not, they're smarter than we are as Gentiles. And they're God's chosen people. They're cast off for a while because they crucified the Lord of glory. But if they had known that he was the Lord of glory, they would not have crucified him. You better leave the Jew alone. He's God's chosen. He's the apple of his eye. And though they're cast off now for a while, what we call the church age now, and God is nationally dealing with the Gentiles, God will yet take Israel back. That's Romans chapter 11. And while the gathering of the Jew to their land, and then the expansion of the nation of Israel over there to nearly 1,000 miles square like it used to be long ago, before Great Britain got hold of it and so on, and before all the different wars of the past that I can't discuss. Israel, illumination, clothed with the sun, light. They kept up the worship of God from Moses to the cross, 1,500 years. And the Gentile never turned a wheel, never had anything to do with it. I want you to get the analogy. It was called the ceremonial law. It was a red heifer, typical of the blood of Christ. They killed the heifer. They sprinkled the blood on the altar, typical of the coming Christ. Though this blood of animals could never take away sin. Hebrews 10:4. But Christ came and offered one sacrifice forever of his blood in the holiest of holies. He took it back to heaven into the Holy of Holies and made one sacrifice forever, and he sat down at the right hand of the majesty or God on high. So Israel is the world's illumination. I could say physically, I could say money-wise, I could say education. Most all of Israel, 77% of all Jews have a college education. And 77% are the ones coming up now who are just children. 77% will be college graduates, and probably 80 or 81 or 82% by the time we get to that era. Ready? The woman was clothed with illumination, the nation of Israel in the tribulation period. And the moon, the lesser light, say this is easy. The moon wouldn't shine, correction, the sun wouldn't shine on us if it wasn't for the moon. Or if it did, it'd miss us. You know what I mean? The sun shines on the moon, and the moon having something like ground up glass. Now, I don't mean that really, but I'm trying to get over to you. Sand with glassy substance in it. And when Neil Armstrong stepped off, I hollered, "Run here, wife, Miss Kemp, run here." His heel will go down about 1.5 inches into icing-like substance, dirt. And sure enough, when Neil Armstrong put his first foot down, the right one, I just right up looking at him, and his heel went down, and he turned around and looked and said, "Say, this planet has something like glass dust on it." You think of that. It has to have that because God had to put it there so that when the sun hit it, the rays would come down to us. If he'd have put nothing but just dirt and left the glassy part out of the top of it, it would have had a dead object, that is just dirt, and sun doesn't reflect from what we call dirt out there in the street. It just doesn't. So Israel, being illuminated, shines through the Gentiles and the people of the world. Of course, there's not but Jew and Gentile, that's all. If you're not a Jew, you're a Gentile. Though you may be mixed blood, you may be a Samaritan, like the woman at Samaria, at the well of Samaria, and it may be mixed with Greek or whatever, but you're either Jew or Gentile. And after you're saved, please understand this, after you're saved, all are the children of Abraham through faith, which is in Christ Jesus. We don't have the crooked nose. I'm not speaking wrongly about a Jew, and you better not. And we don't have the bay window, and we don't have the glib way of talking, but when we become saved, we become spiritually an Israelite, a spiritual Israelite, not a real Jew. So we're all the children of Abraham by faith in Christ Jesus. And so the illumination of Israel, the sun, so to speak, shines through the Gentile world and all the mixed blood of the earth, and the illumination comes down to our earth, and we have the sunshine that I can see out there now against the window. That's very easy, but it's difficult if you don't want to believe that the Jew is the chosen people of God. You'll be in a terrible place here, because that's certainly not Israel. That is. And this represents Israel. Now, ready? And I saw a great red dragon. That's interesting. Say, that represents the devil. His name is Satan. And when you spell it, you put a capital S. That's his name. But if you put devil, you put a little d. That's just a name that somebody gave him, maybe back in Bible days. That is not his name. But his name is Satan, really named Satan. Then he's devil, and then he's Apollyon, and then he's the old deceiver, and on and on and on. The devil's got different sayings about him. People have given him certain names, but his name really is Satan. But I think his name used to be Lucifer, and of course it would be until yet, up in heaven and on earth too. And I think he was the greatest angel that God ever created, and that he had jurisdiction over what area, I do not know. But here is the devil called Red Dragon. Now we're ready for something. Does the devil have 7 heads? No, the devil doesn't have 7 heads. Here comes the analogy. Here comes the symbol again. The devil doesn't have 7 heads. Well, why 7 heads to the devil here? Ready? This world has already had 6 world empires. It has had Babylonians, Greece, Medo-Persia, Assyria, Egypt, and the Roman. That's 6. And the last one was the Roman Empire under the Caesars. Very, very great, and just fell apart inside with too much emphasis on sports, with the breaking up of the family life. I wish I had time for that. I've read a book on what caused the Roman Empire to fall. Too much taxes, too much emphasis on sports, breaking up of the home, the marriage vow, and so on. And, oh, that sure is preaching there. Let's go here. And the devil is said to have 7 heads because the devil has been over and managing, so to speak, all the world empires, 6 of them up until right now. That I'll not go back over them again. My father used to say when I was a little boy, Roy, Woodrow Wilson is head of the nation. He never did say president. I never did pick it up because I thought you're wrong. He's the head, all right, but he's the president, Daddy. But anyhow, I didn't mention it. He's the head. All right, they brought it over. Here it is. The devil has been the head. If I say president, you'd understand it too, wouldn't you? The devil has been the head of that empire, and that empire, and that empire, and this one, and that one. And the last one, before the last one, empire, there is number 6, would be the Roman Empire during the days of Jesus and during the days of Paul. So the devil has been over all 6 world empires. So he's said to have 6 heads. No, it says 7, I know. But the Antichrist will have the 7th head right here. You see this? Ready? There. And the 7th head is being cut off. And I'll get to it in a moment and show you what I mean. But the devil is not a person that has 7 literal heads. Ready? Next point. He's not red either. How come and be red here? Represents bloodshed, carnage, communism, everything that's evil. We talk about somebody evil. We don't say the old red devil, but we should. We call him old black devil, or old black, old brown, old white, old something devil, whatever we call him. But he's not red. It's a figure of speech. It's an analogy. It's a symbol. There I go again. If you don't want symbols, you can't learn. It's a symbol of bloodshed and anarchy and communism, like the red horse that we had in the book of Revelation. White horse, then the red horse, and the Antichrist with a great sword that I can't go back and pick up now. So the Antichrist is not, the devil is not red in color. He's a shining light. And so far as we know, his personality has not been dimmed. So far as we know, he's still the most beautiful creature that God ever created in all the history of time and eternity. Third, and his tail reached out and pulled 1/3 of the stars with him when he fell out of heaven. Now we got something. Stars, in this case, are angels. Job 38 and verse 8, when God laid the foundation of the earth, the stars sang together. Well, that means that the angels sang together. They're called stars. Ready? So here, the devil is said to have a tail, influence, and that reached his tail out and pull with him 1/3 of all the original good angels up until this date of time. You know where I got the definition? I've already given it. I'll make it short. The word tail in the dictionary, I got this from Webster. You could too. One of the definitions of tail is the bright, shining glow of a falling comet. the bright, shining glow of a falling comet. You see a comet fall? Jesus said, I beheld Satan fall. You saw him in his glory fall. He hadn't lost his glory. He was falling and did fall, and we found out last night he had already fallen long, long, long ago when Jesus saw him, before Adam and Eve even. But he had a glow about him. The devil himself, archangel, but yet under the judgment of God and sin and rebellion and all that goes with it, so that he's called Satan now. And he's said to have a tail because one of the first meanings of a tail was there goes a comet and it has a tail. No, that's the light of the comet, and it goes out, as we say, and the meteor burns up, and so he's said to have a tail. And here is the angels up in heaven, and I saw a woman, I saw a woman travailing in birth to be delivered. That's chapter 11, verse 2 and 3 I'm quoting now, and through 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, if you have time to look there, but if you do, you'll miss my next word, and every word counts. Ready? But this woman here, the people of Israel, the Jew, a woman travailed in birth to be delivered. That's difficult. Looks like a woman is travailing in birth during the tribulation period yet to come. No, that isn't what it means. It's a little point of history. There was a time when Israel, the Virgin Mary, if you will, travailed in birth to be delivered, quote, of a man-child. And he was caught up to heaven. How about that? Why didn't he say he died on the cross? Because the Jew didn't believe it. That's why. And it got left out of the 12th chapter because the Jew didn't believe that Jesus was the Christ, since he went to the cross and died there, and all the humiliation that surrounded him and surrounded the Jew that was looking for a millennial kingdom then and didn't get it. And they turned against Christ and crucified the Lord of glory. So you see exactly what I mean when I say that the devil is not red, the devil doesn't have 7 heads. And now back to the woman. And she travailed in birth, that is, the Jewish people at the beginning of human history in the New Testament, she travailed. The Virgin Mary travailed. In a sense, all the Jews travailed, in a sense, Jewish people, to be delivered of a man-child. And nothing about the cross. He was caught up to heaven. There's the ascension, all right, but nothing about the cross. So there is the woman being pursued, ready, and Satan, here he is. I'll not go back over the heads. I'll not go back over tail. And he pursued the woman into the wilderness where God had a place prepared for her for 42 months, 3 years and a half, the last half of the tribulation period. Last night we found out that the middle of the tribulation period is Revelation 11, verse 3. It doesn't say that, but here's what it says. Moses and Elijah will prophesy 42 months. And when they have finished, that is at the end of 42 months, 3 years and a half, they'll be caught up to heaven. Now, so, Revelation 11:3, 3 years and a half have already gone in the tribulation period when we get to 11:3, and 3 years and a half to go, and 3 and a half, and 3 and a half makes 7 years, a 7-year tribulation period. That's the middle of the tribulation period officially, from God's standpoint. Revelation 11:3, where Moses and Elijah came upon the scene. If you want another reference, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 4, The Antichrist sets himself up in the restored temple at Jerusalem and shows himself that he is God. He exalteth himself above all that is called God, showing himself that he is God. And that's the middle of the tribulation. That's the abomination of God. Correction. That is an abomination to God when he sets himself up in the restored temple, the Antichrist, and says, I'm God. And a lot of people will go after him and take the mark of the beast, and beast is Antichrist. Sometimes I could wish the word beast hadn't gotten in there, but I love the King James Version so much. I guess because of his characteristics, the Antichrist is called beast. Oh, he's called that man of sin. That's 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 3. But 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 4 is when he sets himself up in the restored temple and says, worship me. I'm paraphrasing, I'm putting that in there. I am God. He will say that. And that's the middle of the tribulation period, the same as Revelation chapter 11 and verse 3. And then, of course, chapter 13, the Antichrist rises to world power, which is almost exactly the middle of the tribulation period. But officially, 11:3 is. Ready? And the devil, Satan rather, pursued her, Israel. She had 12 stars on her head. Look how easy that is when I say just a word about it. Old man Jacob had 12 sons. 13, didn't he? But he had 12 sons. And these 12 stars in this woman's crown means the nations of Israel, or the people of Israel. So there it is again, the proof that the woman is Israel. There is the stars. The Pope in 1945 said that was the Virgin Mary, and that he had had a revelation from God, and that this was the Virgin Mary, and they tried to make it a dogma of the church. I'm not right certain if they did or did not. And I do not fight denominations. I take care of my own preaching and preach the gospel, and here we go. Ready? And she fled into the wilderness where God had a place prepared for her for 3 years and a half, the last half of the tribulation period. But the devil pursued her, watch out, and in the devil pursuing her, the devil was cast out of heaven, the real heaven, and no longer was any place found for him in heaven. I'm talking about Satan. And no longer was there found any more space or place in heaven for the rebellious angels. I think that Satan or Lucifer meant to take over God's throne. I think that was the purpose of the whole going up there. I think he was full of pride and believed that he could do it, and believed he had the power to do it. And here's the point. 1/3 of all the original good angels, and I couldn't say saved angels. Angels are not saved. They cannot be saved. They can fall from a holy state, and 1/3 of them did. That's Revelation chapter 12 and verse 3. And they were cast down, the devil, Satan, and his angels, some of them at least, unto the earth. Watch out. That is what we now call demons. Some fellow on the radio the other night said that all of the angels that rebelled were cast down to hell, into a dark place called Tartarus. I know all about that, and that statement about Tartarus was true, a dark place. But this says that the devil and some of the original rebellious angels that were kicked out of heaven were cast down to the earth. And that's what we call demons now. They're everywhere. The devil can't be but at one place. But having so many demons to work for him, fallen angels. Too, somebody told me lately that demons were the souls of people that were here before Adam. Well, I didn't know that. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, Adam is the first man. And I don't care how many stoop-shouldered creatures may have been before Adam, he was the first man. First man to have a soul. First man to be immortal. God made him immortal when he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And in the Hebrew, it's L-I-V-E-S. God breathed into Adam natural life, physical life, and spiritual life. I should have said physical life and spiritual life, too. But he didn't do that for the cow. He didn't do that for the pig. He didn't do that for the horse. He just spoke, and they were made. And the birds flew, and creatures were everywhere. But none have a soul. None are immortal. None are creatures that can reason. None are rational beings. Let us make man in our own image, mentally, morally, spiritually, with soul and body and spirit. I know all those verses. I haven't got time for them. And the man is the only one that can be God conscious. The soul makes us conscious of ourselves. I am a soul. I am a soul. And that makes me conscious of myself. And the spirit is that part of man that makes him, watch, God conscious. So man has both soul and spirit. And if he's a believer in Jesus, when he dies, his soul and his spirit and ultimately his body goes to heaven at the resurrection. But that's the only creature on earth that is immortal. Somewhere I quoted that and somebody said, only God hath immortality dwelling in the light. I said, yes, within himself. We borrowed ours and he didn't. You get it. I got to hurry. Only God hath immortality dwelling in the light. Yes, sure. He only has it within himself. He didn't have to borrow it. He had it from the beginning, whenever that was. There wasn't any beginning. God's always been and has always been immortal. And we have to borrow ours from God. Ready? I'm on chapter 13. And there is the Antichrist. And there's the creature I'll tell you about in a minute. And there is the Antichrist. Now we've got something. We're going into the mark of the beast. All you back there that are looking, that's chapter 13. And there's the Antichrist. Of course, here he is too, right here. There he is there, with his head cut off. That's Revelation 13, verse 3, if you'd like to look there. I'll wait a moment till you find it. 13:3. His head will literally be cut off with a sword. By the way, that was the way of killing in the New Testament era. Way of killing was by a sword generally. So think nothing about that. Just pans out fine. So here is the Antichrist. I didn't know how to draw him. And I drew him rather tall and as mean as I could. I'm not talking about his whiskers or his hair. And I'm talking about a gesture he's making. Puffed up, somebody bigoted. Now watch. I'm on 13:3. Now I'm on 13:1. Verse 1. Ready? 13:1. And I saw a great beast come up out of the sea, S-E-A. There he is. And you would think beyond yourself that that is a sea, S-E-A. But it isn't. Look at 17:15 and I'll prove it. In 17:15, the waters that thou sawest are nations and peoples and tongues. I told you you'd have to know symbols. And there is that one interpreted already. That is 17:15. I thought I'd better give it the second time. So coming up out of an agitated people after the middle of the tribulation period, with a drought on in the world, with everything topsy-turvy, and everybody half scared to death except believers, and they don't know what it'll be tomorrow. And coming up out of that amalgamated, disturbed era of the tribulation period, when you had to take the mark 666, or you couldn't buy and you couldn't sell, Did you ever happen to think how hard that will make it on believers to get something to eat that you can't buy nor sell unless you'll take his mark? And the 24th chapter of Matthew says that no believer will take his mark, says if it was possible to deceive them. But it isn't possible. And the believer will not take the mark 666. And for that reason, they'll have a hard time getting anything to eat. And the Jew will have a hard time getting anything to eat. But I can't go into it now. But the 25th chapter of Matthew teaches that the Gentile people will feed the Jew during the tribulation period. And as oft as you've done it unto the least of these my brethren, Jews, brothers of Jesus, I'm talking about spiritual brothers, not flesh. As often as you've done it unto the least of these my brethren, given them a cup of cold water, Jesus said, you have done it unto me. So the Gentile nations that feeds Israel during the tribulation period will have a wonderful time of reward in the millennial kingdom for 1,000 years. I'm talking about 666. The Bible number is 7. That's the number of perfection. That's the number of fullness. That's the number of filling out, either in judgment or mercy. God's number is 7. Put it this way and make it 7. That's God's way of saying things. 6 days did man work, but on the 7th day, God rested from his labors. You see the point? 6 is an earthly name. 6 is an earthly number. 6 generally is connected with something evil, something not godly. So the devil and the Antichrist are as wicked as they can be. 6 for the Antichrist, 6 for the false prophet, and 6 for Satan. There's a divine Trinity. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. There is an evil Trinity. Ready? Satan, Antichrist, false prophet. So you've got the divine and the wicked Trinity right there. So here, coming up out of the nations of the world, you saw that beast come up. Something will happen in world history. I don't know how far we are from the tribulation, but something will happen in world history that will make people to know exactly when the tribulation period will begin. Something, well, maybe not exactly the day or the hour. Something will happen in history. Listen to this that just came out last week, and I've got a preacher friend that stayed all night in Miami, Florida, and he stayed all night with a banker, and the banker told him about this, and he said, I want a copy of it. And he was given a copy of it 2 weeks ago and brought me a copy, and he had a copy, and this came out in the Miami Daily, I suppose Miami Daily. It came out in the paper, and the banker cut it out and gave my preacher friend 3 or 4 copies of it, and I've got one of them, and it's about 666, and you listen to this. Interstate branching is near. Currency. It's not ready yet, but there is some planning being done on a common world currency. It's called Operation 666. Isn't that something? And coincidentally, the World Bank code assigned to the project is also labeled 666. I just got this last week. Preliminary reports say it's linked to credit cards and the cashless, paperless, and proofless society. There is even a document in the wings called the Atlantic Union Treaty, which mentions the common currency and, surprisingly enough, an international court system pertaining to banknotes, and so on. And that was clipped out by my preacher friend and handed to me. And there it is, that the currency, money of course, is being dubbed, not ready yet, but being dubbed 6 and 6 and 6. How close we may be to the rapture, I do not know. I'm not about to go off at the deep end and lose all my influence. If I say he'll be here in a few years and then I'm still living, I've lost my ministry. You don't have any more confidence in me, and I'm not going to do it. They can all do it that want to. God love them. That's up to them. That's their business. But I'm not going to do it. But that there is something. That is not some unofficial something. That is what the bank received personally from the government. The bank received this, and it did get in the paper, I guess. But this fellow brought that home to his own home and gave it to my preacher friend, and he gave it to me just last week. And the notes will be 666, and the credit card will be 666, and the currency will be 666. Not ready yet, but in the making. As if it might be, a year, 2 years, I'm guessing. Let's go on. So that this 666... Now, let's look at this. He saw that creature come up out of the sea, and it was an animal-looking thing, and it had 7 heads. And I've already told you that's not true. The world has had 6 empires, and the Antichrist will have the 7th. And it had feet like a bear. Say, this speaks of Babylon, the Babylonian Empire. This speaks of the Grecian Empire. This speaks of the Medo-Persian Empire. 1, 2 spots, leopard, 3, and then Egypt was the 4th, and Assyria was the 5th, and the Roman was the 6th, correct. And the Antichrist will be one of the 7, and his head will be cut off. Now, ready? I'm on chapter 13. I'm on... and one of his head was wounded unto death. That's the Antichrist head of the world empire yet to be set up. And he was healed of his deadly wound. Now you'll be surprised. Take it if you will, it's so. The way he will be healed of his deadly wound, that is, his head cut off, of course he died, is that he'll be resurrected from the grave, from the dead, and go and sit right back on the same throne that he sat on before his head was cut off. Now here's about the richest thing in the whole book. Revelation 17 and verse 8 says that the Antichrist was, and he is, and shall go into perdition. Revelation 17:11 says, he will be one of the 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He'll be one of the 7 world empires, comma, but he is the 8th. Take a Philadelphia lawyer to figure that one out. He will be one of the 7, the 7th one, that's right. The last one, been 6 already, that's the Roman. But he will be the 8th. No, it don't take a brain at all to figure that out. He will be one of the 7 while he's living and breathing and exercising world power, but he will be one of the 7 in the sense that he rises from the dead, comes up from perdition, which is a compartment of hell, and in his resurrection goes right back to his same throne, maybe at Rome. That's a guess. I always tell you when I guess. And he will be the 8th. Kennedy was killed, and he was a certain number president, and if he'd have climbed back on the same throne, he would have been one more of presidents of the United States. You get the idea. We're going to put up another chart and have a few minutes on it because I've got to finish this in 2 more lessons. Stay right with us. We'll be right back. Here is the false prophet. Here, he is the kind of religious